Embarking on a journey alone, especially for something as long and intense as a thru hike, might be a little bit nerve-wracking for some people. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of going out there by yourself. Let's get into it. So as a quick background, when I thru hiked the PCT, I was alone 90+% of the time, I would say. And that was for two reasons. One is that that was the kind of hike that I wanted. That was how I always envisioned doing it, was by myself. And the second reason is it can be extremely difficult to find other people who share the same passion and commitment and willingness to do this with you. Even if there is someone who has those things, you might not always be trail compatible. So for those reasons, I was alone almost exclusively, with the exception of a short stint in the beginning and a very short stint right at the end. So the bulk of it, I was out there by myself and it was awesome. And now we can jump into the best parts of that. Okay, so pro number one, and probably the most obvious benefit of being out there alone, is you have virtually unlimited freedom, and freedom in a couple different ways. The first way is freedom of pace. So this was a big one for me. I wanted to move at exactly the speed that I wanted to move at, whether that was fast or slow. I really don't like the feeling of other people waiting for me, and I think naturally most people don't like waiting for other people. So when you're out there by yourself, you have complete freedom on how fast you want to go or how slow you want to go. If you're feeling good, you can do some extra miles, and if you're feeling bad, you can cut yourself short, and there's no one there to disappoint or argue with about it. You just do what you got to do and you're good to go. And then the other way is freedom of experience. So besides just the trail, there are other things that you can do, right? You can take alternate trails, you can go into certain towns or not go into certain towns. And while you're in those towns, you could stay at a hostel, you could stay at a hotel, you could go to a nice restaurant, you can go to a movie, you could do a lot of different things out there. So when you're by yourself, it's really nice to just decide for yourself what it is you want to do. You don't have to consult anyone. You just say, hey, I like this town, I'm going to stay here an extra day. Or you can say, you know what, I don't really need to resupply, I'm just going to keep pushing to the next town. So I won't harp on these too much because it's pretty self-explanatory, right? When you're out there, you can make all of your own decisions. You have complete freedom. Whatever you do or don't do is up to you, and that makes life a whole lot easier, I think. Okay, pro number two is something that I think a lot of people look for when they decide to thru hike by themselves, and that is solitude. When you're out there by yourself, you are experiencing some of the world's most beautiful landscapes completely by yourself. You're not distracted by talking with other people. You have a lot of time to just sit with your thoughts or walk with your thoughts, and really give consideration to whatever it is that you want to think about. It is very peaceful being out there by yourself, especially if you find like a killer campsite and it's just you, and you almost feel like spoiled because you're experiencing something so incredible and you're there by yourself. It really is an awesome feeling. If you are more naturally introverted, like I am, then you'll definitely enjoy the solitude that you get out there. If you can sit and appreciate something for what it is without having to, share that with other people, or if other people being there detracts from your experience, then this is a huge pro for the solo thru hiker. So if you are tired of the daily grind and the busyness of everyday life, being out on the trail by yourself is a wonderful way to get some solitude, have time to think about whatever it is you need to think about, reconnect with yourself, and reconnect with nature. So those are really the two biggest pros of going out there alone. And although it sounds like it's only two things, it really does encompass a lot of different factors I could get more specific about. But in general, I mean, that covers it. Having the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it is huge. It's awesome. It really, I think, makes a hike more enjoyable. And then two, the solitude that you get from being alone on trail, seeing these wonderful landscapes and having time to reflect and think and reconnect is also just super beneficial and peaceful and great. And you don't get that when you're, constantly having to have conversations with other people. So with those things said, we can jump into the cons of being out there alone. If you couldn't tell already, I'm a big fan of the solo thru hike. I think it's the way to go. But I will admit there are some instances where being alone is not ideal. The first con of solo thru hiking is one that your family and friends are probably the most concerned about if you're getting ready to do this yourself, and that would be safety. So as a general rule of thumb, I think everyone would agree that it's safer to use the buddy system in the backcountry, especially in territory that you're not super familiar with. But even if you are familiar with it, it only takes one mistake for something bad to happen. And when you're by yourself, you don't get that added level of protection of somebody knowing exactly where you are or what condition you're in. Now, something you can do to combat this, obviously, is carry something like a satellite messenger. You can leave, your GPS coordinates every 10 minutes and share that link with someone back home so that they know generally where you are, or at least where you were last. However, these are not perfect systems. The SOS feature can take hours for someone to respond to. And, if the battery dies, then it's no good anyways. So it's not a perfect system, but it does help to mitigate some of that risk of being by yourself. But when you have someone else there with you in person, then the response time on anything that should happen will be immediate. Now, serious injury and loss of life are exceedingly rare on the trail, but it does unfortunately happen, and it doesn't matter how experienced you are or how fit you are. All it takes is one misstep or one, random event, and the effects can be pretty catastrophic. As a quick anecdote, there was a hiker that went missing this year on the backside of Mount San Jacinto, and I actually camped with him the night before. He was extremely experienced. I believe it was his third time on the PCT. He went missing the next day and he wasn't found for months. So that's not to scare people, but just to say, it is safer to use the buddy system, to tell people where you're at, have people counting on you showing up to places, or having, your GPS or your SOS device handy. Another safety aspect to consider when you're out there by yourself is hitchhiking. I hitchhiked almost exclusively, probably 40 or 50 times, and only a handful of those were with other people. I never had any particularly worrisome experiences, and I think that is also exceedingly rare, but it does happen. Again, there's no perfect way to get around this when you're by yourself. You can try and, feel the person out before you get into the car and make sure that you have a good feeling about it. But anytime that you're by yourself and you get into a stranger's car, you're putting yourself at risk there, safety-wise. So it's always best to hitchhike with other people, naturally, but sometimes it's not possible, and that is another con of being out there by yourself. So with that said about safety, the second big con is kind of the flip side to solitude, and that is that it can be lonely. Even if you're naturally introverted, there are definitely going to be times where it will be nice to interact with other people. That could be on trail. If you're looking at something really beautiful, sometimes it can be nice to share that experience with somebody else. And then also when you're in town and you are off the trail, you've showered, you have clean clothes, you want to go out to dinner and kind of socialize, you might not know anyone there. And that can get kind of lonely. It's often easy to pick out who the other thru hikers are just based on what they're wearing or how they look. And you might be able to insert yourself into those social circles occasionally, but it would be nice to, get to town, have somebody that you already know, and then you can go out and enjoy yourself and kind of refresh and reset before you head back out onto the trail. Now, I will say that even if you're moving at exactly your own pace, it's almost inevitable that other people will naturally be moving at a similar pace. So maybe you won't see them every day on trail, but maybe you'll see them every couple of days, or every town or every other town, whatever it may be. You're going to start seeing familiar faces, and naturally you're going to start talking to each other. Eventually, once you figure out who's in your bubble, when you get to town, or if you're on the trail and you're feeling lonely or whatever, you have that familiar face that you can kind of stop and talk to, or even camp with if you want, or hang out while you're in town. You're not going to be by yourself indefinitely unless you choose to do that, but it is natural that there will be other people doing the same pace as you. You'll get to know them, you'll be friends. You might not be together all the time, but when you do see them, it will kind of combat some of that loneliness that you might be feeling. Okay, and then the third and final con is pretty minor compared to the other two, but that would be cost. And this is specifically talking about when you're in town. If you want to get a hotel room and you don't know anyone to split it with, or you don't want to split it with anyone, obviously you can expect to pay full price for yourself. In resupply, a lot of times people will get packages and they don't want half the stuff that's in their resupply package. So they might dump it in a hiker box, and if you're there when they receive it and they don't want it, you can kind of get first dibs on good resupply. Or if you guys go to the store, you can buy something in bulk and share it. And then with rides, some quote-unquote trail angels will charge by the ride, some charge by the person. But if it's just you, you're going to be paying obviously the whole thing, and if you can shove 3 or 4 people in that car, it might cut down a little bit on the cost as well. So again, very minor, not a huge deal, especially if you budget for it correctly, but still something to consider when you're by yourself. It might cost you just a little bit more than if you were sharing those expenses with other people. So those are my big pros and cons of solo through hiking. Again, this is definitely the way that I prefer. It's not for everybody. This is obviously a hike your own hike kind of situation. But if you are getting ready to hike by yourself, you shouldn't be scared or nervous or anything like that. It's going to be awesome. You will make friends along the way. And as long as you take a couple steps to ensure your safety, you will have a great time out there. So if you have thru hiked by yourself before and you want to leave a pro or con down in the comment section for other people to see, I would really appreciate that. And again, I appreciate you guys watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.